Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming a book haul. I'm exhausted. Book haul? I was about to explain to you why I'm exhausted, and you can tell I'm exhausted because I just called it book haul, and this is a October wrap-up. I'm exhausted because I just filmed a 35-minute wrap-up, and then I realized I hated how the video was, and I hated how long it was, and so we're just gonna restart. I look crazy today, my hair looks crazy. I have to go to work, so I just didn't even care about brushing it because I had to put it in a ponytail anyway. So yes, if you hear noise, it's my dog or my cat because they're cuddly creatures. They want to be heard and they want to be seen. But yeah, I was going to combine all the books that I've been reading the past 3 months because 3 months, a couple months, I don't know, because I haven't been doing wrap-ups, but it made the video too long, so we're not going to do that. I might just make a different video on the books I actually enjoyed from there because there's quite a few books I didn't enjoy from those reading experiences, so there's really no reason to talk about it, or maybe I'll just do like a random mini wrap-up. Who knows? But I'm not putting it in here because it's just not important. But yeah, let's get started. We're gonna talk about Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. I lost my train of thought. Okay, we're gonna be talking about Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. Okay, there we go. Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. This book, the first half, is a movie to book adaptation of Hocus Pocus. So it's just, you know, recapping you on what happened in Hocus Pocus. It was amazing. They do have some added information in there, which I thought was interesting. We get more perspective on why Max did some of the weird things he did in the movie, where, you know, as an adult, I'm like, oh, that's weird and cringy. But they explain it, and I liked it. I did like that, and it was really fun reliving that movie through books, because I love reading, and so reading about a movie that I love made it even more spectacular. And then the second half follows Max and Allison's daughter. And then it also, Danny's in there, obviously. And it just follows her daughter and her friends dealing with the Sanderson sisters. And at first I was like, this is really stupid because how'd they come back? I'm a little confused still about how they came back. Like, I get how they came back. Like, I read well enough to understand. But I was like, who knew? Who knew? And I was like, that's a little convenient. But I still liked it. For one, I liked it because the second half, the sequel, was really diverse, was more diverse than the original. They had queer characters, and the queer character was a main character, which was like crazy, and they had characters of color, which is even more amazing because the first movie did not have any characters of color, which I did not realize until I read the sequel, and I was like, hold on, was never diverse. And also they give us some perspective on the bullies from the first movie, which I thought was great. We learn more about, I think we followed Ernie, maybe not Ernie. What was the other dude's name? I forgot, but hey, Raven, she loves books. Whenever I start talking about books, she wants to be cool. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And at first I was like, I don't need that, but then I was like, I kind of need that. I kind of liked it, and it made me feel differently about the first movie, but I did love the book. So love is kind of strong, but I did really like the book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I heard a lot of people weren't the biggest fan of the book because they're like, it's kind of stupid, and it's true, but it filled my heart with nostalgia. It made me feel Halloween ready, and I felt like fall lived in my heart, and so I enjoyed it. I liked it, and I would recommend you to read it if you like Hocus Pocus, or you like Halloween, or you want to just be filled with fall and warm, cozy vibes, and something that's not stressful, because the book was not stressful. And who doesn't like a stress-free book during stressful times? I like a stress-free book. Okay. And then I read, let's find it. Come on, folks. Okay. I read This Is Your Brain on Anxiety, What Happens, What Helps by Faith G. Harper. The author of Un-F Your Brain. I gave this a 3 out of 5, but I didn't like it that much. I gave it 3 out of 5. Raven, are you okay? I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I think there's a lot of helpful tips in here, which is why I was like, it's worth noting, and it's worth giving it a higher rating than I would probably really want to give it, but she just jumped on the bookshelf. You crazy kitten. But the writing style is just not for me. She cusses all the time. She tries to be funny too often. And that's just, for me, in a psychology book, it's not really something I look for. It's not really something I enjoy. I do like more textbook writing when it comes to psychology novels, just because I just want information. And some of the things that she shared in here I didn't really think was super necessary, and I didn't really care for it. But I could see if you're young or a person who thinks psychology is really freaking boring but wants to work on their mental health, this would be for you, which is why I think it should be a 3 out of 5 instead of like a lower score that I would want to give it from my own personal reading experience. I'm gonna give it 3 out of 5 because I can see why this would be so helpful for someone who's like, I hate either one, reading, 2, I hate just like super sciencey talk. I hate it. I just don't. But they're like, but I need to work on my brain. I need to work on me. And though you should seek help if you can afford it. If you can't, books are a good way to give you some tips on how to deal with yourself. And I do recommend it. I do recommend this book, but yeah, cussing, unnecessary information, but I still thought it was great, and there was really good content in here. So that's all to be said about that. Let's see what the next book is. Oh, an amazing book. We should have just started the whole day with her, but it's the Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow. I can't say the name. It's fine. I love this. I gave this a 5 out of 5 star. Easy. It filled me. It was so cozy. This gave me fall feelings, but honestly, even if I read it during like around Christmas time, I still would feel super warm and feel really Christmassy. It's just good if you want to feel cozy. I think that's the most appropriate term for this book. It's just cozy. If you want to feel cozy, warm, and just full of happiness, this book, because even though it deals with some sadness, like Morgan, she was born on a day that made people think she was a cursed child. She was supposed to die, but she doesn't. And that's all I want to say, because I don't know what else they say on the back. She tries to join the Wondrous Society. Is it back here? I'm sure it's back here, but I can't find it. But she tries to join it and to keep herself alive. And even though it has dark, like that sounds pretty dark, a child that's supposed to die, but it stays warm and cozy the whole time. And it talks about, the family you're born into may not be the best, but you can find a new one. And that's what she did. And I thought it was amazing. And I cannot wait to continue on with the series. Really recommend it. And then the next book I read was A Light in the Attic by Shel Silverstein. I loved it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 star. Amazing. It is written very adolescent-like, but then deals with very adult topics, which I loved. And then I read Egghead, You Can't Survive on Ideas Alone by Bo Burnham. I would have gave it like a 2 star, but I don't like to rate poetry anything lower than a 3, so I gave it a 3. I just didn't think it was very good. It wasn't funny. Some people said it was supposed to be funny. I didn't think it was. And I read both of these books because I wanted to read Adolescence. I was going to make a whole video about it because she made a video talking about how you just read the book wrong. She wanted to have her writing kind of like Shel Silverstein's and Bo Burnham. Sorry, I have glasses on because I took them off quickly. But so I read it, and it made the experience better because I did read part of the book without reading those 2 other poetry books, and it did. When I read the second half, it was definitely more enjoyable than the first half, and so I think she was right. You did need to read those books, but I don't think you should have to for books because that's weird. I still don't really enjoy the poetry all that much, but I still have hope for her that her second book will be better because she's a new writer. I don't think she's a nice person. People said that she says pretty bad things. I don't know, but that's not what we're rating right now. We're not rating her personality, we're rating her writing. It wasn't great, so I just decided not to make that video because there's quite a few people hate Reddit or just made videos about how much they hated it, and I don't think that's very nice to constantly just make a couple people's enough. They didn't need me to talk about how I had issues with it, so that was that. Okay, and then I read 13 for Luck. Where's that book? My golly, I had it. Oh, it's right here. I read 13 for Luck by Agatha Christie. This is my first Agatha Christie book, and I gave it a 2 out of 5 star because it was boring. I mentioned this in a reading vlog about how I just eventually just could not tell you what this book was about because after like 100 pages, I was just like, I'm still bored and not interested because it switches between many different stories. And so once I started kind of trying to get comfortable with the writing, it switched. And so it was just boring the whole time. I didn't like it. I told my roommate about that, and she was like, you have to read her other books. And I can't remember what book she recommended, but I will definitely give her books another try because she's a great writer I've heard about. And so I doubt everyone would be like, she's a great writer if she wasn't. But this book was just not for me. So I'm hoping for better days. My cat just scared me. Okay, and then I read Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This is a gift that I got a year ago for my birthday, and I read it then, and I read it again this year, and I absolutely loved it just as much as I loved it, more than I loved it the time before, because it's just amazing. I also love it because my friend annotated in it, because this was her book, and then she gave it to me, and she put some annotations in here, so it made it even better. But I love this book. It put me in the spooky spirit for sure, and so yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. It's just a collection of folklore, and it's amazing. Enjoyed it so much. And then a really, really good book that I read was Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Do not know how to say that, so we're not going to try anymore. But this follows a man who does everything his first family. He provides for his family. He works so hard. He's just a hard worker. One day he wakes up to go to work, and he's a bug. He is a bug. And it just follows through that journey and his thought process. It was so beautiful, so well written, and I just loved his character so much. I thought it's definitely, I'm just kind of confused why I didn't have to read this in high school, because they made me read books that sometimes I was like, I could have lived without this book, but this book just felt amazing. It felt relevant enough to the world today. I mean, throughout this whole book, he's like panicking because he's a bug and he wants to go to work because he needs to provide for his family. You turned into a bug and you're so worried about your family. You know what I'm saying? And so I love this book. It was amazing. I think I have to do a whole video just talking about that book, because I don't want to say any more, because spoilers will happen because it's a small book. So I might make a spoiler-filled video on that book because I loved it. And then the last, but definitely not least book, last but not least, is I Hate You, Don't Leave Me, Understanding the Borderline Personality. I gave this a 4 out of 5. This would have been given a 5 out of 5, but I had some issues with the book, but it was fine. This is meant for people who want to learn more about borderline personality, somebody who has borderline personality, or for someone who knows someone with borderline personality. I read it because I'm a psychology major, and that's all I have time for, is reading books about things I learned in class to further my understanding, and so I did. And great. A lot of it I already knew about because of school, but some of it added some additional information, which I enjoyed. I felt very educated afterwards. I felt like I learned a lot more. Now, here is the issue. A lot, and this is why I actually lowered it, wasn't actually because of what I read. There's some parts in the book that I had some issues with, but not enough for me to remember, so not enough for me to care. But I was reading some of the reviews, and some people really just, it didn't make them feel good as people with borderline personality. And I don't know if he purposely marketed it towards people with borderline personality, but I'm guessing that he did. I don't know, but maybe, I don't know. Because, so here's the thing. This is a rough part, because there's some parts that we have to learn about borderline personality so that we can help people, and the studies that they've done sometimes doesn't always shed a person with borderline personality disorder in the brightest light. That being said, not everybody with borderline personality disorder has those specific issues. One of those issues can be that, especially within males, it's found that they can be more abusive in relationships if they have borderline personality disorder. But that does not mean every male who has borderline personality disorder has those issues, okay? And there was things that they talked about women, about how they jump from people to people, how they need to feel loved, how they can themselves be abusive, how they can be promiscuous. I don't know an appropriate word for that, so which means promiscuous, even though it seems super outdated. And people felt attacked by that. And I think that's definitely fair. But he does make it clear in the book that not everybody has that problem. He does make that clear, that not everyone has that problem. And most people understand that. But it can be difficult. And I think we should have made a giant page right at the beginning of the book that says, whoever's reading this, just because you read these things does not mean that everyone with borderline personality has this issue. Let's not make people with mental health issues seem like monsters, because they're not. They're just struggling with what's going on in their brain. And so I can see why that could be a problem. Kind of like any mental illness, sometimes people take the worst and they assume everyone's like that. So even though he tells you that it's not like that, if you read this book, you might just take the worst and like, people with borderline personality disorder are this way, and this way. Kind of like how they do with schizophrenics, people with DID, etc. And so, yes, something to keep in mind. I do recommend this book, but I do recommend you also, if you don't have borderline personality, or if you do, not to view someone with borderline personality disorder as somebody who is a bad person. I would hate if you read this and you had borderline personality and you viewed yourself as a monster, because that's not good. I definitely think people need to be careful. Like, the type of people that read this is not everyone, because I don't think everyone should read this. I do think that there's a lot of triggers in here. Talk about self-harm, suicide, etc. And sexual assault is mentioned in here. And substance abuse. So it could be definitely triggering, and a lot of people with borderline personality, again, not everybody, do have past experiences with trauma. And so if you do have borderline personality disorder, I would ask that you evaluate, or anyone who reads this, make sure you're in the right place to read this. I would hate if you fell backwards in your progress of trying to become better and feel more whole by reading this and it triggers you too much. That would be bad. So this book is rock in a rough place. Is that how you say that? I don't know if that's the right saying. But I do think if you're a psychology major, counseling major, social worker, you should read this book, because it will give you some further insight, because you're used to reading things like that. So if you've been traumatized in the past, you probably are working through it, because literally this degree only ever talks about trauma. But yeah, I just don't think that book is for everyone, but I did enjoy it. And that is all that I read this month. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it wasn't interesting. Sorry if the book weren't interesting. Not very many books were read. I read 10 books, but they were very small books. But I love them, so it's fine.